Just imagine how good you would feel if you spoke with complete and utter honesty at work and you never held back because you were afraid of how someone would react. And imagine how well companies would be run if everyone understood what people thought of them and how they could be doing their job better to help the business grow. It sounds so obvious when I say it, but it is so incredibly rare to find people and companies that operate in this manner. Heck, for the largest part of my time as a manager at Morning Brew, I absolutely messed this exact concept up. But today, that changes. Thanks to Kim Scott, who is the author of Radical Candor, you're going to leave with a framework and tools that will empower you to operate bullshit-free and for your business to operate bullshit-free. What Kim Scott has developed is this very simple framework. It's broken into 4 quadrants, and every manager in a company lives in one of those quadrants. You have a vertical or a y-axis, and that axis is caring personally. So the higher up on this y-axis, the more that you care personally about your employees and the people that you manage. The category for the x-axis is challenging directly. So the further to the right on this axis, the more that you are challenging your coworkers or employees directly, speaking openly, honestly, and in a direct manner. And the further to the left on this axis, the less you challenge those around you directly. The top left quadrant is what we call ruinous empathy. This is reserved for managers that care really deeply about their people, but do not challenge them directly. I think most managers fall in this quadrant. I definitely fall in this quadrant. This is the quadrant where we think because we're empathetic, we can't say anything but positive things. So we don't say anything at all if it is somewhat critical or it comes off as negative. This is the quadrant that causes surprises and not the good kind. So the classic example here of someone who is a ruinous empath not over communicating is when they end up firing an employee and the employee had no idea that they were doing poorly and it is a complete shock to them. That should never happen. Let's move down. This quadrant is reserved for people who don't care personally about their people and they don't challenge directly. This is the worst possible place to be. It's not common, but it leads to the bosses that you never forget. This quadrant is referred to as manipulative insincerity. And Kim Scott had a perfect example of this type of behavior. She had a past boss who ended up walking into one of her coworkers' offices. That boss hit the speakerphone button in the office, ordered her coworker to call another colleague and ask that colleague what they thought of the boss. And this boss instructed the employee to act like the boss wasn't there so that he could hear what this person thought about them when they didn't think he was listening. This is such a perfect example of someone who doesn't care about their people and doesn't want to address things head on, which is the perfect formula for someone who operates behind people's backs to benefit their own career trajectory. Bottom right quadrant is the professional that challenges directly but does not care personally. This is known as obnoxious aggression, or I like to call it the raging asshole. We've all worked with this type of person. They are short, they are direct, they're blunt, at times they feel emotionless, and in a lot of ways, they're super effective, but they come off as unempathetic. So the difficulty with this type of person is, how is the employee that's receiving feedback from the raging asshole going to be motivated to do things that this person says to them? And I'd say this is the second most common type of manager after ruinous empathy. Now, last but not least is the top right quadrant. That's the one we've been waiting for. This is the person who cares personally, so they're high on personal care, and they challenge directly. This is what Kim Scott refers to as radical candor and what every professional should strive to embody. And it makes sense. Think about how much more likely someone will be to receive constructive guidance on how they can be doing a better job if they knew that their boss actually cared about them and wanted to see what's best for them in their career. You're listening to this and you're probably like, okay, that makes total sense, right? care about people, be direct so you don't have to speak behind people's backs. But how do you actually do that in practice? 3 recommendations. The first is to share this practice with your team so they're familiar. So literally take this 2x2 that you drew out and share it with your team. And then go and ask them to rate where you lie on this graph. The whole idea is to get people comfortable with this framework, to understand that radical candor is the goal. And what that allows you to do is, as you start trying to challenge people directly and you care deeply about them, they are open to receiving that feedback because they understand what place you are coming from. Exercise number 2, make backstabbing impossible within your company. You cannot let people talk badly about each other to you. So in Kim Scott's example, when she would have any employee come complain to her about another employee, and in the example she used, these were 2 employees who butt heads a lot, they didn't like each other, she would do 2 things. She would start by asking the person if they have tried to work it out directly with the other employee. If the answer is no, she tells them to go do that, and she doesn't entertain or engage a conversation about that other employee. And if the person she's talking to is like, I can't do this, I can't address them directly, then she will offer to bring both employees together in front of her. She will moderate an open and honest discussion, but she will never act as the intermediary that engages in conversation about the other person without them there. The third and final exercise for engaging in radical candor, you need to make it easier to speak truth to power. And what that actually means is you need to make sure that people who work for you, so your direct reports and their direct reports, they need to be empowered to speak openly and honestly and challenge each other directly. And so what Kim would actually do to work on this exercise is she would meet with a manager's direct reports with the manager's permission. There was this manager named Scott. Scott had 10 direct reports. And she would say to Scott, can I get feedback from your direct reports to help make you a better manager? He would say yes. She would go to the direct reports and say to them, I want you to deliver me 1 to 2 pieces of the most important feedback to help Scott be a better manager. She would compile the feedback and then she would deliver them to Scott. Scott would go through the feedback and his job was to basically prioritize it and then deliver to his 10 direct reports the exact things he was working on because of the feedback that they gave him. And what Kim also said here is she would start these exercises by making the direct reports anonymous. So she would deliver the feedback to Scott without personalizing people's names to it. But she said, if you're actually operating with true radical candor, you don't have to be anonymous with it. And so her goal was, after doing this exercise a few times, employees would actually be okay with personalizing the guidance they gave to Scott to be a better manager. And so now you have the keys to radical candor. You understand what it is. You understand why achieving it is so important. It is actually your moral obligation as a manager or an employee to make other professionals the best versions of themselves. And you have 3 specific practices for indoctrinating radical candor in your work and your culture of your company. This is always a difficult concept for people to put into action. So I want to hear if there's anything that's stopping you from trying to build up this muscle as soon as possible. Shoot me any thoughts or questions you have about radical candor as a tool for being a great manager to alex@morningbrew.com or DM me on Twitter @businessbarista. Thanks for watching Founder Journal. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want more great content around business, entrepreneurship, and career, you can hit the subscribe button below, and you can also hit the bell so you're notified every time we publish a new video. Take it easy.